You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Lin. This is the show where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and selling your home to live and to sell. Welcome back to Season 7. This is Episode 8. Our show is brought to you by the Staging Assistant. It's more than an inventory system. Manage your leads, your proposals, your clients, and your stage houses on your desktop, tablet, or phone. With the Staging Assistant, you will know what you own, where it is, and when it's returning quickly and easily. Create your design and packing list from the comfort of your home so you can hit the ground running when you go into your warehouse. Created by stagers, specifically for stagers, is the only tool you need to manage your growing staging business. For more information, visit stagingassistant.com. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Home Staging Show. So on today, Pam Christensen is back to talk to us about the financial side of a home staging business. We're going to talk about profit margins, working with a bookkeeper and a CPA, as well as how to price home staging projects. We'll also chat a little bit about hiring as well. So I know pricing is always a sensitive topic, so I'm super grateful for Pam to come back and being so generous with the information. So thank you, Pam, for coming on the show today. It's really great having you back. I mean, the last episode was absolutely amazing. People gave really good reactions about all the information given. You're just such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to running staging business. So I think a lot of listeners found it very helpful when you so candidly and generously share about your information.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
So on today's show, I would like to talk a little bit more about the financial side of your business. I know it's a bit of a touchy subject. A lot of stagers don't want to talk about it, but I think we can still convey at least the general information for stagers, especially the new ones that are a little bit confusing about how to price or how to handle finances in their business. So how do you normally approach pricing your projects?
So we approach it two different ways. The best way to do it, and I do this once a year, is I figure out what all of my overhead costs are. So I have warehouse rent, I have business insurance, I have truck insurance, I have labor. Well, labor is separate. I'm not going to include labor in overhead right now, but heat for my warehouse, those types of overhead prices that you have to pay no matter what, you have those fees. And then I divide those costs. I add them all together. So I have a total cost of my overhead for a year of those types of costs. And then I divide them by 365 so that I have what my overhead cost is per day. And then I keep that in mind when I price my projects. So there's two different ways to price. One way is a number by square foot, which is really the easiest way. So if you have a 2,000 square foot home, you might want to charge, $1.20 a foot or whatever. The difficulty with that pricing method, I think, is that if you're doing a partial stage, which most of us do, you don't always stage all the bedrooms. Do you do the figure per square foot for the entire square footage of the home, even if you're only staging half of it? How do you want to do that? But it still gives you a ballpark figure if you use a price per square foot. The other way is to get more scientific about it and to take your overhead costs that you've figured out that you're going to peanut butter across because you have to pay those costs, and then take your estimated labor cost for that job and then determine what your profit margin is that you want to achieve. Then you have to also look at what the market is. What's the going rate in your area? You don't want to be extremely lower or higher than your competition. You want to make sure that you're within the ballpark of what other people are charging. And it's just, that pricing is so hard because if I'm staging, it just also it's also affected by the type of home and the distance. So there's a lot that goes into pricing.
No, I totally agree. And I think it's really interesting because I do it similarly in terms of overhead costs, but I divide it by kind of the rough estimated projects I will have this upcoming year. Because I think once you're in business for a long time, you kind of can calculate or estimate at least what this year's forecast looks like from the historical numbers. So I don't do it by day, but I do it by per project.
And that's a good way to do it. For the past 3 years, we've staged just over 300 homes.
Mm-hmm.
So doing it the way I did, it kind of works out. But if we were going to, and some of those homes are larger and smaller, we have some that are significantly larger. So you could do it by project. That's a good way to do it too. If you're just getting started, however, it's going to be really hard to determine. I mean, I know one stager and there, a couple of stagers in our area that they only staged maybe 25 to 27 homes their first year. So then it's a little more difficult to know how to peanut butter those overhead costs. Of course, then your overhead costs are actually less. So you don't have the labor costs and the storage costs that you do when you're a larger company.
Right. I think it's interesting. I mean, yeah, it depends on your business model. And I think with labor, it's also can be very tricky. I think there's a lot of hidden costs in running a business that most people don't realize, because not only we have overhead, also there's hidden costs with labor as well. Because if you have freelancers, they don't pay for, I mean, you're not paying on their tax, or you don't have to pay workers' comp for them. But if you have employees, their hourly rate is actually not the true cost of an employee. It's actually plus workers' comp, plus, whatever tax that comes with employment, and then also any payroll cost as well, or insurance too.
Right.
So all those needs to be added back into the project costs per project.
Exactly. And that's what we do rather than try to get down to too much detail is for my movers, I just estimate $25 an hour, which is not what I pay them, but it covers the overhead costs, hidden costs that you discussed. So if I know, for example, if a house is over an hour away from my warehouse, I'm in the Seattle market. Our traffic is horrible. It's horrible. So if a project's an hour away from my warehouse, I add another half an hour for traffic. So it's going to take an hour and a half to get there, an hour and a half back. So there's 3 hours to stage, 3 more hours of travel time for the D stage. So I've got 6 hours just travel time times $50 an hour because I have 2 movers. So then that's how I figure out how much my mover time is going to be.
Right. And is it different for you when it comes to pricing vacant homes versus occupied homes?
So we don't stage occupied homes anymore. We only stage vacant homes. I think the best way I can answer that question is I've had clients come up to me and say, well, what if I leave my dining set, and what if I leave my bedroom set, and I'll leave this? Is it going to be, how much money will that save me? And my answer is none. Because it's actually costs me more, and it's harder for me to stage when they leave their pieces there. Because now, instead of working around a design where I know I've got complement, I can't actually talk today. When I've got stuff that goes together, it's easy when I can pull this set out of the warehouse. I usually use this art, these accessories, rather than going into some home with pieces that we don't have anything that will go with them. I might have to actually go shopping in order to use their furniture. So it actually costs me more. So I always tell them it won't save you anything. If you'd like to leave it, I'll work with it. However, it's really best for me to start with a clean slate.
That's really great. I'm glad that you mentioned this, because I think it's really important to learn how to deal with these type of potential client issues. And I think it's really valuable to have this type of, in a way, scripts to make sure that you know how to deal with client objections. Because I get that question a lot, actually, as well. I mean, I understand if the budget is really tight, but usually they're really not saving anything significant, and I'm very honest about it. And most of the time, clients just like, okay, then we'll just take it with us.
And I also advise the realtors and the clients that, hey, if you're going to pay a moving company, and most of them are, if you're going to pay a moving company to come in and take everything out, and then you're going to leave pieces, you're going to have to move twice. That's not saving you money, and it's harder for you. Just let us take care of it for you.
Yes, that's a really good way to say it as well. That's something I use all the time in my script as well. And also it's very true in terms of pricing. Like, it is more costly for them to pay movers twice, because movers are going to charge you the same amount of money just to come out, and then sometimes they have minimum. So it doesn't make sense for them to come back for like one dining table set.
Right. Or for you to try to con your kids into moving your dining table. It's like, don't put any more stress on your family than you need to. We're professionals. We can do it for you.
Exactly. And then how about for starter homes versus luxury homes? Because I understand you probably put in different levels of inventory in these different price points of homes. So how do you approach pricing in these different types of homes?
So a starter home versus luxury homes, I add on a surcharge when I'm doing luxury homes. Our sweet spot, our market is more mid-range homes. We do some luxury homes, but we don't stage. Well, I'm in the Seattle market, so our mid-range home now is like $800,000, but we go up to like $2 million. Maybe $3 million max. We don't do the multi-million-dollar homes. It's just not what we do. But when we get up into the $2 to $3 million range, I do add more per square foot, because I know that I'm going to have to use higher end inventory. I may have to buy new stuff because, your furniture gets used and it gets worn. Moving furniture is really hard. It's hard on the furniture. So I do add a surcharge on to my square foot estimate when we stage luxury homes.
I see. And then, so how do you price your furniture rental then?
So I've been doing this for a really long time. So a lot of times I'll ballpark it, and I'm pretty accurate. But for somebody just getting started, we use the Staging Assistant, our inventory tool, and in the inventory tool, we have what we would charge for rent for each item in our inventory. And one thing that I advise people to do is maybe to create like dummy inventory that you can put into a proposal just to get a ballpark figure of what the rent would be. And what I mean by that is, if I know that I'm going to use 2 sofas, 4 chairs, 2 coffee tables, when you look at a house, you have a pretty good idea of how much inventory you're going to have. Then I have a dummy inventory list with an average rental price that helps me get pretty close to what I should charge for rent. You can also do it a quick and dirty way. You can do a percentage of your staging fee. That works too. I don't get down to the level of I'm going to charge $5 for this accent piece, or I just estimate the charge what I would charge to rent the big pieces, the couches, the chairs, the art, large art, especially because that's expensive. I don't get down to, I've got 10 pillows and I'm going to charge $1 a piece for rent for pillows. I just don't mess with that. It's not worth it.
Yeah, same. I think for us, I usually know how many bins go out. For example, like packed bins of accessories go out for a job, and I'll probably be like, a bin is probably about $50 rental. A couch is about this much. I think it's really difficult to price individual items, so I think ballpark makes the most sense. But for someone who just started, do you have a rough guideline? Because a lot of times, I think some staging school teach about 25% of the retail price to start for your rental. Is that pretty accurate for you, or you change your percentage?
I don't do that. I charge more of a percentage of the staging fee than per piece. I think when I took my training, I was told to charge 10 to 20% of the purchase price of the furniture.
Right.
But at the time, I didn't have any way to keep track of that. So it's like it's a great idea, but if you don't have any way to track it other than spreadsheets, it's very cumbersome. So I just started using a percentage of the staging fee. It was quick and dirty for me. I never rented furniture, so I didn't have to charge that, and it just worked. It worked best for me, and I do easily recover my investment in my furniture, even using a lower rental rate, I think.
Cool. And then how do you calculate the percentage? Like, how did you come up with a number? Do you have a bookkeeper or a CPA that helps you crunch all this numbers to make sure that you are getting your money back?
No, I use the staging assistant, so I know how many times that piece has been rented. And then I'm not as detail oriented as some people are. So
really, it's a shocker because I think staging assistant sounds very detail oriented.
The staging assistant is, but and that's why I needed it, because I'm not detail oriented. I would just say, well, you know what? I'm buying these. Mostly, I buy my furniture wholesale, so I buy couches for between $200 and $400. I rarely pay more than $400 for a couch, and so I know if I rent that for say $20 to $30, after I've rented it 10 times, I got my money out of it.
Right.
And most of that I do more of an estimate.
I see.
Than an accurate, I don't spend a ton of time on it, to be honest.
That's good. I mean, I think the number crunching can drive you crazy.
Yeah, it really can. And,
outsource it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do have a bookkeeper and an accountant. They primarily take care of things for me, like my payroll, my taxes, sales tax, billing, depreciation, what I should capitalize and what I should expense. All of those types of things that I don't want to have anything to do with, because it's not what I am and it's not what I do. And when I tried to do it myself, I made a huge mess of it. So I have very good people that do that for me now.
That's great. And then how do you determine your profit margin for each job? Or do you calculate it like at year end? Or like, how do you do it?
I do it per quarter.
Okay.
I don't do it for each job. And at the beginning of the year, and I think this is an important thing for anyone and everyone to do, no matter how long you've been in business and no matter what business you're in. At the beginning of the year, sit down and look back over at least your last 2 years at what your net profit was. And it's not, what you want to look at is what percentage of your gross was your net profit. And a healthy business, I've been told, and I am not an expert on this, and I probably shouldn't even throw out a number because I'm not an expert. But what I've heard is a healthy number is that your net profit should be somewhere between 15 and 25% of your gross. So what I do every year is I look at where I'm at, and then I put together what my goals are for the next year. So if my net profit was only 16% of my gross one year, then my goal is to get that up to 25% the next year. And then there's costs that you're going to have. you just can't avoid. But there's other things that you can avoid. You can start working more efficiently. You can cut out things that aren't doing anything for you. For example, I was subscribing to, I'm not going to say what it is, but it was a service that sent you leads, and you had to pay for the leads, whether you actually got a job from them or not.
Oh, I hate those.
Yeah. And then what I found out was everything I got from that particular service, they were people they were just curious. They weren't valid clients. I got maybe one job out of 10, but I had to pay for every one of those leads. So I cut that out. I think it's really critical to look at your net profit on a quarterly basis. I think that you need to look at profit over time. If you try to look at it every month, it's not valid. That's just,
no, I agree with that. Yes, I think it's really important to look at the P&L, the profit and loss, at least every quarter, because it's really important to trim the fat. I call it trimming the fat. It's every quarter I'm looking at what fat I can trim from the expenses, because that's one way to be more profitable, is to cut losses, basically.
Yeah.
Marketing campaigns that don't work, and whatever it is, subscriptions, like you said, cut it.
Yeah. And also try to keep your pulse on what's going on in your market area. Maybe you need to raise your prices. And I actually, Todd McAllister.
Oh yeah.
He put something on the Facebook page that every year he raises his prices 10%. Well, I looked at that and I thought, you know what? That's a good thing to do. And maybe 10% is that might be too much for you for your market. Maybe not, but at least look at raising your prices on a regular basis if your market will support it, because your prices are going up, labor's going up. We have to pay sick leave now. Our minimum wage in the state of Washington's gone up. Everything's going up. And in order to be profitable, you need to raise your prices. And if you analyze your profit and loss on a quarterly basis, you can look to see as well, I'm not really making any money. So then you'll need to raise your prices or cut your costs, one or the other.
I think that is a very valid point. I think 10% I think depends on the market. I know my clients will bulk at 10%, but if you need to raise prices, you have to raise prices, because like you said, our costs are going up constantly. We need to make sure we're profitable on each job. So how do you determine when you need to raise prices? Are you doing what Todd is doing, basically just do it annually, or you have a time that you just kind of feel like it's time?
I think I look at it annually. Last year, I really didn't raise my prices very much. This year, I did raise my prices 10%. But that's because when I looked at what was going on in our market, our housing prices have skyrocketed. So it doesn't make sense if it's a 2,000 square foot home that I was staging for, say, $2,000, which isn't accurate, but say it was. 2 years ago, that 2,000 square foot home would have listed for $450,000. The same house in today's market lists for $800,000. Raising my prices just makes sense. And other stagers in the area are charging more. And I attend the RISA meetings and we discuss what everybody's charging so that we can stay within our market range. Plus, if I lose a job, then I'll go back to the client and say, hey, I see that you didn't select us. You went with someone else. Would you mind sharing with me why you chose that particular company over us? And most of the time, not always, they'll share what it was that made them choose the other company. And it's usually for us, it's not price. They'll always say, well, your prices are pretty close to the same, but the client already had a relationship with somebody in that company, or they could stage earlier than you could, or whatever. But but it's very rarely price. And I think that's important to keep in mind.
I think that's a really great point because I think a lot of people feel that there are a lot of unethical stagers out there undercutting the market by, offering a significantly lower price or whatever it is. Have you encountered that a lot in your market? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I used to, a few years ago when the market was really tough. When we first started, it was 2007. So in between 2007 and probably 2010, we had a lot of problems with people that were like staging for next to nothing. I don't run into that as often now. I don't know if I just don't work with those people, type of clients anymore, or I just don't run into it. But I don't seem to have a problem with that anymore. I know there's new people that are getting started, but I've actually had people that say, well, there is somebody who is charging way less, but I want to go with you because you've been in the business for 12 years. You have an established track record. You know your statistics. So we'd rather work with you even though you're more.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. What's the percentage you would say are mostly repeat clients?
The percentage of what?
Of your clientele, like how much would you say it's repeat clients?
I would say 80%.
And then out of the rest of 20%, are they referrals or people just found you through the internet?
I would say 10 to 15% referrals and about 5% for people that just find us.
Well, I think that's very juicy because I think you establish such a great rapport with your clients and establish such a great credibility and trust within the marketplace. And that's why people are going to go with you. And I think a lot of people do complain about these, I don't know, maybe particular type of stagers undercutting the market. But the thing is that they're going to lose those jobs once they raise their prices or not, because they're not able to support their business.
Well, yeah, they're not. You can't. You're not going to stay in business if you undercut that much because there's costs, and if you're not covering your costs and you're losing money, then you're going to go out of business. So that's at some point you're going to have to start charging market, what the market will support, or you're done. It's not staging. When we hire someone, my hiring process is I interview them on the phone. If they sound like somebody that might fit with us, then we do a face-to-face interview. And then before I hire anybody, I have them come in and have an audition day. And I don't pay for that day, but they come in and they work just like I'd hired them. And then a lot of times what happens is those people find out what staging really is, because some people have this HGTV view. It's like, is it somehow that furniture dances itself in there and arranges itself, and all you do is you walk around and you put a vase here and a piece of art there and you're done,
Magic.
I know, it's like the little birds and the butterflies flying into it. But I think also the new stagers going into business, some of them really have no idea of what the business really is.
I agree. And we actually do the same. I don't do a whole audition day, but I definitely do an audition hour. I have a very specific task that they would be doing if they were hired to do. I mean, most on-site assistants, their number one job is to make the bed look really great. Mm-hmm. And so they actually going to be given the steamer to steam out the bed for 30 minutes. And if during this time I can tell that they're just not handling it and they're hating it, I know they won't last in that job. And same thing with when we hire for a warehouse organization as well. I mean, we usually come up with a kind of a tricky problem for people to deal with on job site, something they wouldn't expect during an interview, and see how they handle those situations. And then if they don't handle it well, they're not going to be able to stay with us for very long.
Yeah. And so an audition day works for us. And I just let people know. And sometimes people will say, well, I don't even want to do that. I said, okay, then
You can go
Thank you for
apply
coming.
somewhere else. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Thanks for
Yeah.
coming.
I mean, that was the thing I took away when I first like when I first got into the job market after college, after my service with AmeriCorps, I like when the job market was pretty bad, so I couldn't get a job, and so I worked at a yoga studio. And the owner was a very smart businesswoman. She founded Gymboree actually, and later in her life, she discovered yoga as her passion. So she opened these basically their local chains. Basically, she was doing very well, very successful. And I actually took a lot of things I learned on that job into my business because when I first started working as a receptionist, I had training days where I basically had a pay cut. It was basically my audition. I was still paid, but at a lesser rate. And then so when we hire people, they have an audition. Basically, they have to perform a task, what they would be doing in the job for basically 30 to 45 minutes. It's like we told them beforehand. So they're not like, oh my God, how long am I going to be here kind of thing for an interview. But then after that, they're in a trial period, and it's spelled out very, very clearly that you're not fully hired until you pass your trial period.
We do the same thing. I start them at a lower rate for the first 30 days. And after 30 days, we have an evaluation and determine, if it's working and if they're catching on and doing well, then they'll get a raise. And if not, then we have that discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the feedback is very important. And coming back to pricing, do you usually have a minimum price for doing a job? Why or why not?
We have a minimum, yes. We, like I said at the beginning, I figure out what my overhead costs are. So we have a baseline number that we have to make no matter what size the house is. So if it's a 500 square foot condo versus a 1,200 square foot house, it costs me a certain amount to have my truck leave the warehouse with two guys and loaded and a stager doing the design. There's a certain cost. So I have a $1,700 minimum. That's my market. And it's if I stage 2 rooms or an entire condo, I don't do anything for less. That $1,700 includes the first month's furniture rental, but it doesn't include sales tax.
That's cool. I didn't realize it. So you charge sales tax with your furniture rental?
I do. We have to in this state.
Okay. Yeah. So whoever's listening, check your state accordingly. Just make sure you're complying to the law. That's very important.
Well, it is. And the thing is, they don't tell you when they change the laws. I have a very good bookkeeper and accountant. They let me know laws change. You now have to charge sales tax. I said, okay, sorry.
And that's another important reason why you should hire a professional bookkeeper and CPA, because they know this stuff. We don't.
Yeah. And they will protect you.
Yes.
I've heard some horror stories. I'm fortunate I haven't had anything happen, but there is a local stager who's he's been around a long time. He's luxury home staging company. They're well known and highly respected. And he shared something that happened to him because he got audited by the state, not by the country, not by national, but the state of Washington. And they almost put him out of business. And he didn't know he was doing anything wrong. But yeah, they almost put him out of business because of the fines, because he wasn't charging sales tax appropriately, some other things. But you need to know the laws in your state and comply with them.
That's crazy. Oh my God. That freaks me out so much.
Me too. That's why I said, okay.
It's like a business owner's worst nightmare. You woke up and you go out and check your mail, and all of a sudden you get this letter, and then like your whole world's like crashing down. You're like, what's going on? Audits are not fun at all.
No, and I had no idea that the state could audit you. I knew the IRS could audit you, but I didn't know you could be audited by the state.
Anyone can audit you, even the labor, like when you hire employees, you have to report your new
Right.
hires. That department
Right.
can audit you as well for labor practice, for
Yeah.
like workers' comp or anything. Anybody, sales tax, franchise tax board, they can come audit you as well. We have, because of Eco Joe, so we have to have, well, also because we buy wholesale, so we have a resale license in the state of California. And the thing is, we are located, our warehouse is in a pretty industrial area, and we really usually only go to the warehouse when we have to pull inventory or do whatever. So we're very rarely in the office, but sometimes like once a while, once maybe 3 years or so, I come out, there's like an auditor with a clipboard checking if we are who we say we are, because our warehouse building has our name on it. So yeah, I've seen him a couple of times just so randomly. I don't know how, but yeah, there's auditor that comes by apparently to check up on things. So as a business, you actually have a lot of liability, and that's why liability insurance is very, very important. You should definitely have that.
That is true. It's, and many of us went into business. Like I was in corporate America. I was a senior manager for Boeing and Washington Mutual before they went bankrupt. And I go into business for myself. I had no idea. I just wanted to have a business. I didn't. It's been a big learning, very big learning experience.
I do. I think a lot of people coming from corporate backgrounds get culture shocked because, so I'm in my photography master right now, and then the business photography comes up, time to time. It's a natural conversation, obviously. And you can tell who's been in corporate America because there always be like, yeah, if my friends, want me to take their photograph, I'll totally do it for free. But I'm always like, no, because you're just leaving money on the table. I mean, my friends, they get a friends and family discount, but they're not going to get the job 100% free, because as a business owner, every penny, your employee or whoever, your overhead, that's all cost. You really cannot afford to be doing projects for free unless it's for your mother. That's the only person who gets free jobs. I'm very like hard on this. People laugh. I'm like, no, the only person that gets a free job is my mom, and whoever she says gets a free job too. So anyone else, no. You had to, I think even with friends, you had to be very clear in terms of your professional boundaries so that they respect you as a professional as well.
Yes. And I think that's it's good advice. And it's also good to keep in mind that when you first start, well, even after I've been in business for a while, and it doesn't happen to me very often anymore, but realtors used to come up and say, hey, can you just come and stage this house for free and I'll give you free marketing? No. Sorry. Are you going to list the house for free? I don't think so.
Yeah. I'm just so amazed every time people have the balls to ask me that. And those people usually have their own business. I'm just like, are you staging for exposure? I mean, I don't understand.
I don't. No, we're not.
We're not. No,
we stage for
don't
money.
For free, unless it's for our moms. No one else gets free jobs. So how long is your typical contract, and what happens if someone goes over their contract, and how do you calculate a rental for that?
So our typical contract is for 30 days. And in the contract, it says your rental will be due at the end of this 30 days. We charge in advance and we get a credit card number. So if they do keep the furniture in place for over 30 days, upon, we charge their credit card for the next month's rent when it becomes due. Now, what I do, because we do have a lot of clients that we've worked with for many years, is as soon as we know that their house is pending, and we keep track because we favorite the house in Redfin. So we get an email from Redfin that as soon as the market status changes on the home, we send them an email, and the email says, congratulations, we see your home is pending. Please let us know what your closing date is, and we'll schedule it in on the calendar. And keep in mind that your next rental period will be due on such and such a date. It's going to be this amount. Would you like to make sure we can schedule your D stage prior to that to help you avoid any additional charges? We also include in that the caveat that you don't want to pull the furniture until all the contingencies are removed. So you want your inspection to be signed off and the appraisal to be complete. We do have clients that are investors. I am a sponsor for REAPS, which is the Real Estate Association of Puget Sound. I've been a sponsor for like 10 years, I think. And for REAPS members, I do a 60-day flat rate. And it gives them that confidence that they don't have rental due in 30 days. And it's not really hard for me to provide that benefit to them because our houses sell in 3 days and there's bidding wars. So it's not really a risk for me. And I don't rent my furniture. I own it. So we do that only for REAPS members or for long-term clients that we've staged for 10 years.
I really like that. I think that's very clever, especially giving the REAPS members a little perk. I think that really differentiates yourself as well. I think that's a great idea.
We used to offer a 10% discount, but it didn't make any sense. Because the price of staging varies from house to house, they didn't really know if they got a discount or not. So I gave them something that was more tangible.
Yeah, I know. I think that's extremely clever. And I have this question that's a bit of a big question. It's a listener question. Listener Adrian submitted this question for you. She asks, how much should I charge for staging a 2,000 square feet home with 3-bedroom, dining room, 2 bathrooms, a small office, and a living room? And this is for a flip property. So I know this type of question comes up a lot. I get these questions a lot personally as well, but I actually think it's very difficult to answer for someone who's not in this person's exact same market. Because unless you're doing the exact same market and doing the exact same type of job that Pam is doing, it's going to be very difficult to get that number for you. And also I think it depends on how people approach staging and what type of inventory they're bringing in. The price can really vary. But let's say this is your market. How would you go about pricing this job?
So it's still difficult
yes.
without knowing the location. So let's put a little bit more of a scenario around it. So say it's a 2,000 square foot home that's located within 10 miles of my warehouse. That's a mid-range property. It's not a luxury property. It's mid-range and it's close to my warehouse. It would probably, what I would tell a client if they ask me this question is that it'll be anywhere from $2,200 to $2,600, and that depending on how many rooms we stage. And then 22 would be minimum staging. So that would be staging just the master, the living room, dining room, kitchen, and the bathrooms. Probably not even the office. And then the 2,600 would be full staging.
Got it. And you know this number very well because you have a lot of historical data based on it, and also you know your inventory very well.
Right. When you first start, it's I would actually find a RISA group, a local RISA group where you could go in and get advice from other stagers in your market. Or another way to do it, which I don't really like this way, but I had a stager leave my company not long ago, and she moved to a different area. And what she did was she called staging companies and she asked them that type of a question to see what they'd give her a range so she'd know what she should be charging in her area.
Yeah, no, we don't recommend that.
I didn't like that one very much. It's like, no, I don't feel like that's really.
Because I've been on the receiving end of that.
That's a little unethical.
Yeah, I mean, you know the call as well, so it's very annoying.
Yeah, that's probably.
I mean, if you're gonna do that, just flat out ask them. Seriously.
Well, I think really, like I said, you should go to either a RISA meeting or find other stagers in your area and tell them I'm a new stager. I'm just getting started. And it's difficult because some people are very open and sharing, and other people are very put off by that, and they're not going to help you.
No.
It's just really, it's tough.
But at the end of the day, it is business. Some people run business very generously, like you do. You're giving out information very generously, and some people choose not to. We have to respect people's boundary. They have no obligation to divulge any proprietary information.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's better to ask flat out and get a no than try to be sneaky and pretend to be a make-believe client and waste someone else's time.
It's not good.
Because I think if you're upfront, if a stager comes to me and upfront asks me about it, I actually will give them a few suggestions, knowing that they're new in the industry. But if you lie to me and pretend to be a homeowner, I would, if I know about that, you'll be in my little shit list, basically.
And that's why I think going to like a RISA meeting, because that's the forum where people are going there because they will share. And they do, in our RISA meetings, we do little activities and exercises where we fill out questionnaires on pricing, and we don't put our names on them. And then we go through them and see, and it's really, it's surprising to see that most of the time we're all pretty close, to the same price. We're very similar in pricing. And if you're just getting started, that gives you a baseline. And that's a forum where they're going there to share.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think that's great. And I think RISA, I'm not sure if they still do this, but they used to do surveys and they publish a pricing guide of what individual state or local market is charging. I think for those of you who are members and still can find that guide, I think that is helpful to see what individual market is charging. I think it's very difficult to ask on a forum where people are coming from very different area. Like you said, like the scenario can be very different for each house.
Yeah, if you're in the Midwest, your prices are going to be a lot different from being on the East Coast. And our prices here in the Northwest are very different from the prices in where you were in LA or Southern California. The prices
San Francisco, yeah.
And San Francisco is really different. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all very different. And the situation will be different too, the type of homes you're dealing with, the different issues you're dealing with. I mean, if you stage homes in San Francisco, like I did, you are expected to deal with parking tickets, really steep hill that are difficult to park on, or actually no parking spots in the neighborhood, and you have to park a truck in the cargo van, or very narrow doors, narrow staircase, because a lot of older homes, that's my market. So everybody has different issues. So it's really hard to answer this type of question that is so kind of blank, in the sense that there's, even with flip properties, you have luxury flip properties and starter home flip properties. So it can really vary.
And I don't think a flip property you shouldn't price them any differently than you price other properties. My very first job that I ever did in 2007 was for a man who was just getting started flipping houses, and I undercharged because I didn't know any better, and he was fine with that. But that same person today, back then he was flipping anything, it was like $200,000 homes, mobile homes, anything he could get. Well, today that same person is still my client. However, he's now the owner of a very large investment company. He's grown his company, and he personally flips $2 to $3 million homes, and I stage for him still. So you price them competitively, whether it's a flip home or not. But you do keep in mind that people who are flipping homes can become very good repeat clients. So you do want to make them happy.
Yes. Actually, in general, any type of clients, especially real estate agents and flippers, because these people will bring you repeat jobs. whereas the homeowners may not, because most people only sell their house maybe once or twice in their lifetime.
Right.
Where a real estate agent could be listing a house every week. So you just never know. And what would you say some of the mistakes maybe you've made or you've heard someone else made when it comes to finances for the business?
So one of the mistakes that I saw and that I see a lot is people that are just getting started. They really like shopping.
Yes.
So they think, wow, this is a good deal, so I'm going to buy this. And my mantra has always been, I'm looser on this now, but I used to be very adamant. I didn't buy anything unless I had a house to put it in. Because whenever you buy something, it starts its life cycle. It's going to get damaged when you move it. You're going to have to store it. And if you don't have a house to put it in, you've just put money out for nothing it's actually costing you money. So
yes.
Buying stuff that before you have a house to put it in, or buying something because it's really cute and trendy and expensive. I've done that a few times. I'm learning not to do it.
I've done that many times.
Because it's hard, because it's just like, oh, but that's so cute. And you buy it and it's like way more than you would normally spend on something, and you use it once. And then
the moment you buy it, it depreciates, and it's something called used. And then so you can't get it, at the original value. So
yeah. That's I think one of the biggest mistakes. And it's the easiest one to make, is to go, well, it's just darling. I need to have that fluffy bench with the lamb's wool stuff on purple. And then you go, oh, it's so cute. And somebody else say, ew.
Oh my gosh.
I want you to get that out. And that's a mistake. Wait, actually, that's a mistake we make even to this day. So we stage, like I said, about 300 houses a year. And maybe out of the 300, we might get 5 houses where I get a call from somebody and they say, we don't like the staging.
Oh.
And it happens, it's because you.
Those sound so subjective. That's the other thing. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what would sell. We're just doing our best guesses to serve the house the best, but sellers may not like it. So.
Yeah, well, it's usually not the seller so much as what I find is there's a lot of realtors, and not primarily the women realtors, not so much with the men realtors, that really would like to be stagers.
Yes.
And so they have a specific idea of what they want in the house. And if you don't put exactly what they think they would put in there, if they were stagers, then you have an issue. So one recently that we did was we were under the gun. I had understaffed, and we were staging a home that was a little tired. And so I had some inventory that I had marked for donation or sale that I wanted to take out of production. But we were running low on stuff, and I looked at it and said, well, that's not so bad. We'll use it. That was not the best decision.
Oh, no.
Because then the realtor called and said, I hate the dining room table. It looks like an old lady's table. So we ended up switching it out. So I think those types of things, putting something in against your better judgment, that's a problem.
Yeah, Murphy's Law strikes again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just have one last question for you, and then if we have some time, I think we'll open up to audience question if they have any questions. So what is your one top tip for stagers when it comes to pricing their projects?
My top tip is to know your costs and make sure that when you're pricing your projects, you're covering your costs, and you also build in at least 10% profit. I would say more like 20% profit over your cost.
Mm-hmm.
And don't back down. We have what I call let's make a deal clients.
Mm-hmm.
And as I get to know them, some of them, it's a game to them, and and that they enjoy it. So I build in, I overprice it so that they can come back to me and say, well, can you give me this much off? And I can say, okay, just for you, I will do that. But then I'm getting down to what I would have charged them anyway. So it doesn't hurt me. But you will always have let's make a deal clients. And don't do something for so low that you're not making money on it just to get the job. Because what's going to happen then is that client may come back to you, but they're always going to expect that bargain basement price, and you'll lose your shorts.
I totally agree. You couldn't have said it better. So thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it. So that's it for the show. Thank you so much for listening. You want to help and support the show, there are 3 ways to do so. You can leave a review and rating on iTunes. You can share the show on social media, or you can donate to support the hosting costs for the website and the podcast. You can now make a donation through the show notes on the sidebar of our website. So thanks so much again for listening. Have a wonderful week and happy staging. And don't forget to check out our show sponsor. Our show is brought to you by the Staging Assistant. It's more than an inventory system. Manage your leads, your proposals, your clients, and your stage houses on your desktop, tablet, or phone. With the Staging Assistant, you will know what you own, where it is, and when it's returning quickly and easily. Create your design and packing list from the comfort of your home so you can hit the ground running when you go into your warehouse. Created by stagers specifically for stagers, is the only tool you need to manage your growing staging business. For more information, visit stagingassistant.com.